Name's Mark Lengel. Been teaching here, as mentioned, 5 years. Would never ever thought I'd end up teaching. Look back at my life. So I went to University of Florida for undergraduate. Wanted to get a business degree, wanted to get an MBA. But after undergrad, I moved to Aspen for about a year. If you want to go to a top MBA school, you need to have at least 2 years work experience. It's right up there with your test scores and grades. You don't have 2 years work experience, you won't get into a top 20. In fact, you probably won't even get into a top 40 MBA. Part of that is when you're in the program, a lot of class discussions. You learn from fellow students as much as you learn from the professors, and the students have a lot of stories to share. They want people to have stories to share. If you came straight out of undergrad and you haven't worked, you just lack that experience. There's also a lot that goes along with a maturity level once you get out and work on your own. Might not tell you exactly what you want to do with the rest of your life, but often it'll tell you a whole lot about what you don't want to do with the rest of your life. Kind of narrow down those choices. One sidebar as we talk about that, I also remember when I was getting out of undergrad, I said, I got to find that perfect career, that career I'm going to like and enjoy for the rest of my life. Kind of like when you're trying to get married, you want to find that perfect partner you're going to stay married to. Biggest difference though, most people change careers about 7 times during the course of their life. It's about once every 6 to 7 years. You don't like the job you're in, you can give your boss a 2-week notice, walk out the door. Your spouse, a little different story. You have to go through the divorce process. It's very arduous, expensive, pain in the butt. But changing jobs is pretty easy to do. So instead of thinking about the perfect career for the rest of your life, think about what you want to do for the next 5 to 10 years. Makes it a lot easier decision. Doesn't have to be that perfect choice. Just kind of what am I interested in right now for doing the next 5 to 10 years? I say that because I would have never ever thought I'd wanted to teach when I was your age. I didn't want to teach. It was even on the radar screen. Wanted to go to business school, lived in Aspen. Couldn't make up my mind though between business and law. Do I want to be a lawyer or do I want to go to business? Kind of leaning towards business. So I applied for what's called a JD MBA. It's a joint degree. You get your law degree and business degree all at once. Business school is 2 years for master's. Law is 3 years. Your JD is a Juris Doctorate. Combine the two, it's 4 years instead of 5. I applied. So I went to University of Florida. Had a great time there. Actually get decent grades. Had a little bit over a 3-point average. I've heard studies show that if you go to SLCC and then go to the better than if you go straight into the U. Had some fraternity brothers who went to community college first and then enrolled in Florida. They graduated on time. One got a mechanical engineering degree. The other one got an electrical engineering degree. I started out wanting to do naval architecture, which is a horrendous degree because you got to learn architecture and engineering at the same time in designing yachts. Almost got into a school called the Webb Institute of Naval Architecture. It's the foremost school for naval architecture in the world. Sits in Long Island Sound, Glen Cove, Long Island. If you get in, you get a full sponsorship or full scholarship for all 4 years. You have to have a congressional recommendation to get in there, though. Just don't get in the door. Made it to the final cut. Glad I did it, though. So we talk about careers and careers changing. Naval architecture would have been interesting, but I don't think I would have been interested in it for 40 years. It's a very narrow career. So I started out engineering. First year at school, partied way too hard. I got an A++ in socializing. I think I got a bunch of C's and D's in all my other courses. Ended up dropping about 4 of them. Took 5 years to graduate because that first year was a total waste. We talk about going here to SLCC being better for you. You go to a big school, say like the U, what happens? Every Saturday, there's tailgate parties going on. In Florida, because it was a college town, we had a bar that had nickel beer night. We had another one that had quarter beer night. We had one that was called Bladder Bust. Everybody drank free until the first person went to the bathroom. Talk about the social stigma. You didn't want to be the first person to go to the bathroom. And there's always this self-appointed bouncers, big guys who would stand in front of the bathroom doors anyway. It's kind of block your way. But it was a lot of fun, right? A++ in socializing. Slid down from engineering to accounting first. Still socializing way too much for accounting. So I went to finance, still socializing way too much for finance. Bottomed out with a marketing degree. Two friends I told you about who went to community college. One got a ME, mechanical engineering, the other EE, electrical engineering. They took business as a minor. They said, oh, this business stuff is easy. Had I been focused on my studies, I probably would have thought the same thing. But I thought socializing was more important at the time, right? We all want to have a good time. School's a good time to have a good time. You got a bunch of people all around your same age, right? Socialize. Anyways, bottomed out with a marketing degree. Moved to Aspen, did the ski bum thing for about a year and a half. Actually had a semi-career job where I was a property manager. Most people go there and they're just either busboy, waiter, bartender career path, or they're doing ski lift operator, ski instructor. This was actually something career oriented. I knew I needed that because I wanted to get an MBA. To get a good MBA, you need to have that 2 years work experience. So got it, applied to school. Still thinking about law school at the time, though. Had a friend whose mother was a judge and father was a lawyer. We all know lawyers make good money. So I applied to Florida, Duke, and Vanderbilt. Florida is very tough to get into. Large population state, got waitlisted in both programs. Duke, I was accepted to law school, but waitlisted for the business school program. Vanderbilt, I was accepted to business school, but waitlisted for the law school. Ended up going to Vanderbilt because that was my first choice. Got done in 2 years, and I was glad I stuck with just the MBA, because 4 years of Vanderbilt tuition would have been twice the debt I had after just 2 years. Currently, it's $50,000 a year. Then it was $20,000 a year. Good thing to do. So by doing SLCC, what are you doing right now? One, you cut the cost of your tuition in half, right? You go to the U, it's $7,000 a year, plus you got to pay another $1,000 a year success fee, $500 each semester. This is only $4,000 a year. It's also a much smaller campus. Class sizes are smaller. You go to the big state university. I had a class called Theater Appreciation. 500 students. You think the professor has any clue who you are when there's 500 students? No, you're just a face in the crowd, literally. Kind of worked out good. Had a large auditorium. We had about 10 or 12 fraternity brothers taking at the same time and 2 pledges. The pledges sat at the end. They had a quiz every Friday. The answers kind of funneled their way into the center. You know, we kind of moved it down the line. I shouldn't be telling you that. That's not good. Good academics, is it? It's reality. It was a class. It was a fluff class. Think of the term theater appreciation. One of those meant to enrich your knowledge. General ed course. Good school to go to, though. Good thing to do is graduate debt free if you can. Go on to get your 4-year degree at the U. Guess what? Looks the exact same whether you started out here or there. Nobody knows. But you saved yourself half the tuition your first couple of years. That's a very smart thing to do. And again, studies show that students who go to community college first and then go on to bigger school tend to do better. Think about yourself coming out of high school when you got a big campus, again, a lot of distractions, parties going on all the time. You come here, it's a smaller environment, more personal environment, easier to do well. So you're on the right track. I ended up going to Vanderbilt, up my game a little bit. That finance and accounting degree that I didn't get in undergrad, I managed to be a little more serious about my studies. Part of it was when you're paying $20,000 a year in tuition, you get a little more serious about it. Got out. Had some good job opportunities back east. One was as a commercial real estate for Trammell Crow in Memphis. Would have been a nice job. A job that would have been really good was a REIT analyst, Morgan Stanley Dean Witter. Being an analyst on Wall Street is kind of like playing in the NFL or NBA. That's the big leagues. Big money, a lot of money. Wanted to ski though. Lived in Aspen, loved it. Kind of want to go back to Aspen, but Aspen in the NBA had a busboy, waiter, bartender. That. there's a guy who was a bus driver when I lived there. He had a Harvard degree. Give you a clue, you don't need a Harvard degree, bus driver. Save the money. So I wanted to live in Aspen, wanted to ski, but knew the jury wouldn't work out too well there. Had a nice opportunity to be a read analyst, again, 72nd floor of the World Trade Center, kind of a neat place. Interviewed there, viewed the Statue of Liberty, Lesson Day and all that. Went up to the top of the building, kind of neat. Dad just about shot me when I told him I was coming out here and I didn't actually have a job when I was coming out. He's like, what? You're giving up a read analyst position on Wall Street? Move out to Salt Lake? In fact, I didn't even know I was coming to Salt Lake. I was going to move out west and ski somewhere. I got to Wendover and I had piled all my crap in my car, personal belongings, driving all the way out. My wheels were rubbing the tire well. Was pumping gas over in Wendover. On my way, I'd written a business plan for Bend, Oregon. I was going to go there. I look at my tires and the steel belts are showing through. Better not drive across Nevada with tires that are about to close. I turned around, came back here, got new tires. Sister had a friend of hers from Florida State who worked for Delta, and she lived in Sugar House. Ended up putting me up. That was 95, 27 years ago now. All by chance. Actually ran, I was calling my mother at a payphone up in Huntsville. Just let her know where I was at. Anybody know what a payphone is anymore? See it in the movies. See it in the movies. I was at a payphone and called her up. Hey, Mom, this is where I'm at. You know, so she knows. We kind of put her mind to rest. And so a girl walked up. She was a tarot card reader. She said her tarot cards. Stranger that. Ended up staying the night, and that was again 27 years ago now. Just kind of ended up here by chance. Ended up working at Fidelity. Still remember September 11th to this day. I biked in just like I biked to work here. Got into work, and it was just dead silent. Normally, it's just background noise. People taking orders, stock orders all day long. A lot of noise going on. It was just dead, and I'm like, "What's up?" I had no clue that September 11th had happened at that point. What it said to me is sometimes following your dreams. Had I taken that job as a read analyst, I would have been working in the 72nd floor, Tower 2. Friend who worked there. Friend of my father's who helped me get the job. That was where my father was kind of pissed off. So I turned it down after he helped get that connection. Be an analyst on Wall Street, needed an MBA, top 20 MBA, you needed connection too. It's a tough job to get. But I was glad. It's like, you know, told me that out of the 3,500 people in their office, 700 died that day. Do the math, that's 1 out of 5. So 4 out of 5 chances you would be alive. 1 out of 5 chances you would be dead. Think of Russian roulette. Russian roulette's only 1 out of 6 you end up dead. It's worse odds than Russian roulette. So on that day, I knew I made the right decision to come out here. I was glad. Even if I probably would have survived, I think that would have been a life-changing event. And just if you watched the news that day of people jumping out of the towers rather than die to get burned, that's kind of a scary thing. Ended up working at Fidelity for 10 years. Great place. If you want a job, good place to start your career. They have an excellent tuition reimbursement program. You go to school, pay your tuition up front. As long as you get a C or better, they'll pay you back that tuition. They actually have jobs that you go into, apprenticeship jobs, or where they train you during the summer, and then during the school year, they let you work basically a swing shift, afternoons, evenings. You only have to work 20 hours a week, and they'll be paying for your school while you do this. So anybody's thinking of a job to get, that's a good place to look. They have a big office down at Gateway. Good industry here too in town. Not only is there Fidelity, Goldman Sachs is an office up by the U. E-Trade, which is part of Morgan Stanley Dean Witter, has a major office here. Wells Fargo has their brokerage office here as well. All good firms to work for. It was a great opportunity to work my way up the corporate ladder. I was getting promotions about every 1.5 to 2 years. I understand now they're expanding so fast, people are averaging promotions every 3 to 6 months. Had some students who worked there, and it's worked out very well for them. So again, good. And you don't have to be a total numbers person. You have to be more of a people's person, working with people all the time. You're helping them with their investments. You're good with people. You don't have to be outgoing. You're not selling. If you're outgoing, you go to a full service brokerage. You'll make a lot more money, but it'll be commission based. You go to Fidelity, they'll give you a salary. You don't have to bring in the business. You just have to work with them, do what's called develop the business, help them invest, basically. Great career to have. Did that for 10 years. In 2004, the market started coming back. I'd worked my way up to management. They had what they called mandatory overtime, which wasn't totally mandatory. You're supposed to work 20% overtime. So on a 40-hour week, that meant you're supposed to be doing 8 hours a week of overtime. I didn't mind doing it. Got extra pay for doing it. It was kind of nice. But my wife and I, we had 2 daughters at that time. My oldest daughter is now a junior at the U. Younger daughter's getting ready to graduate. They were like 3 years old and 1 year old at the time. She was trying to work her way up the corporate ladder. She was working at a bank. She was trying to become CFO of the bank. I was working at Fidelity doing overtime as well. 2 jobs requiring overtime and 2 kids was too much. She threatened divorce if I kept working the overtime. So I stopped working the overtime. Boss said to me, "You're a manager. You got to lead by example. You got to do the overtime. Don't do the overtime. We're going to demote you to rep. We're more optional." So I went back to doing the overtime. I restructured. Instead of 4 days a week, 2 hours, I did 2 days a week, 4 hours. Basically what it was is she was going to have to pick up my daughters from daycare. The youngest daughter stayed with grandma, my mother, so that was easy for her. Grandmas are always great for daycare. Difference in grandma and daycare. At daycare, you have to get the kid out of bed. You have to change their diaper, get them dressed, get them fed before you take them. Imagine doing all that while you're trying to do the same for yourself and you're getting ready to work and you're all stressed out. You got to get to work on time. Doubles your stress level. Grandma, on the other hand, you pull the kid out of bed, dirty diaper and all in their PJs, take them over to grandma. Grandma will deal with that. Much better, much easier to do. And on the back end, most daycares will charge you $1 a minute for every minute you're late, typically after 6 o'clock. Grandma, stay as late as you want. It doesn't cost you a dime. So grandmas are a lot better, or grandpas, family members. Work really well. Middle daughter was funny. Wife didn't want my oldest daughter being cared for by my mom because she didn't want anybody watching her. She kind of a selfish thing. When we had our second daughter, I said, "I'm taking our older daughter to daycare. I'm not going to do both. You're going to have to pick up one." All of a sudden, she was okay with grandma for the reason. Grandma's a lot easier to deal with. So she was taking our younger daughter to grandma. When I started working overtime, I told her that's going to be days of the week when I can't make it there by 6. You're going to have to do the pickup. She was having to work extra hours too, though, so that was cutting into her ability to get promoted. So if she went back to threatening me, keep doing the overtime, we're going to get divorced. So I stopped doing the overtime. Boss is like, "Already told you, don't do the overtime, you get demoted." Isn't that a wonderful choice, divorce or demotion? Don't you love that option? And sometimes life comes at you that way. Fortunately, she got a promotion. Her promotion was enough for us to live off of. I'd always wanted to do the entrepreneurial thing. So I gave my boss a 2-week notice. Talk about that 2-week notice, beautiful thing, far easier than divorce. Marriage lasted, that was 5 years in the marriage. It lasted another 10 years after that before we got divorced. I think at that point, we've just kind of grown into doing our own thing. So I left, started a business. Pull this up for you. Started importing skis, backcountry skis from Italy, and ultimately avalanche beacons from France. And there's my ski business, Telemark Tech System. Initially called it Wasatch Ski Distribution. I raced the race called the Powder Keg. It's a backcountry ski race. 5 of the 6 podium winners were on the ski from Italy called Ski Trab, and they just weren't here in the States. So when I left Fidelity, I actually flew over to Italy, met them in Munich, Germany at a trade show, much like the outdoor retailer show that used to be here. They called it ISPO. Managed to strike a deal. Italians are kind of interesting. They had a neat factory. It was at the base of the ski area. Your location as you could ask for. Adriano, the owner, his 2 sons owned it. They got it from their father. Nice little ski factory. He said, before I do the deal with you to export the skis or import for me to import them, he wanted me to come see the factory because he's all proud of their Italian craftsmanship. So I go down and see it. We're like this close to striking a deal, signing on the bottom line, so to speak. And the clock struck noon. If you ever go to Italy, they take their siestas. He's like, I'll see you in 2 hours. I'm like, can we just finish this off so I can be on with my day? Nope. See you in 2 hours. That's the way it is. Actually worked out. They had world championships going on. Bodie Miller, who started his career by winning the combined downhill here at the Olympics in Salt Lake up at Snow Basin, was there. It's kind of funny. Bodie was like he was kind of like a star. He was people ski racing over there is a lot bigger. There's a Herman Meyer was an Austrian ski racer at the same time. They had a whole article. Herman was like a spoiled child. Atomic, which is an Austrian ski company, it sponsored him. Pulled his spot. Well, he was no longer the alpha skier, kind of like the alpha dog of skiers. Got made the second guide. Bodie was made the first guide. He was pouting all about it. How can an Austrian company do this to become an Austrian? But Bodie, there were signs all over the place. We love Bodie. All the women loved him. Kind of the macho man. He won the race there. So I got to watch that for 2 hours, struck the deal to import the skis, came back, was importing the skis and the avalanche beacons for about 5 years. Along the way, I invented and patented a Telemark ski binding called the Telemark Tech System, which I now market worldwide. This is up on Mount Olympus right here. One of the engineers I worked with, guy I met up at Alta right there. But it's been a lot of fun. Still do that. Still market and distribute that ski binding worldwide. Sell them all over the world. I have retailers in Japan and Europe, here in the States. Kind of a fun thing to do. Nice hobby to have. Hobby business, as it's called. Doesn't make a ton of money though. It's a niche of a niche product. You ever get into marketing, they'll talk about niche marketing. But when you're in a niche of a niche, actually it might be called a niche of a niche of a niche. It's kind of breadcrumbs that you get. Not a ton of competition, although it's been a revolutionary binding. It won backcountry ski test in 2014. Editor's choice, best binding out there. It's my own creation. Kind of nice, kind of like having a kid. It's your own creation. Kind of built it up. You get a lot of belief in it. But I have had 3 other companies knock off the patent. When I was filing my patent, any of you have a product idea you'd ever like to do? Patent? Anybody in here? So, what kind of product?
So there's silicone latex, and then there's
Dog food.
specialized.
Okay. So if you get a patent, or you want to patent one of your products, you can go to the USPTO website, US Patent and Trade Office. You can start with a provisional patent. Provisional patent costs you all $100 and you file it yourself. And what that does, it buys you 1 year before you have to file for the actual patent. Basically, to put together a prototype. Why are you putting together prototypes? What are you doing? You're taking your idea around and rip it off. Most of them are good. And part of their business is they're not going to do that because they know other people won't come to it. But some can. Or you might just spill the beans to somebody while you're trying to find somebody to be a supplier. So you get that provisional patent, it gives you a timestamp. You have 1 year. During that year, you're protected. Then you got to file your regular patent. You probably want to either patent it, turn your patent agent to do that. Expect that to take 2 to 3 years. But the provisional patent gives you a timestamp. So anybody who tries to copy it after that, you're good. Now, when I got my patent, it cost me, I think it was $3,000 to file the US patent. But that's only good for protection in the US. If I wanted to file internationally, and just countries that have skiing, would have cost me $55,000. This is a small business. I didn't have 55,000. Well, I could have put it all into that patent worldwide, but then I wouldn't have had enough money to manufacture the product. Would have been stuck in the water. So I chose to get a US patent. What that did was protect the US market, which is a big market. So all the major players stayed at bay. But I didn't get a European patent. And guess what? Some guy in Switzerland ripped off my idea. Guy who was importing my binding to Norway ended up ripping off the idea, and there's nothing I could legally do to him. Although I had a friend, worked in software. He got lucky. He had a database business, made a database for a company in Oakland, what's called a reader board. It's basically group marketing information, group sales at hotels. They hire college students to go around and take pictures of all the group marketing boards in hotels. Then they upload that to a computer, and then the next day, a group sales agent will call those groups and say, hey, I work for Hilton and you're at Marriott. Come to Hilton with your group, and those groups end up booking a lot of hotel rooms and conference centers and stuff. And they catch them while they're right there. So they can go out, they'll go meet with them while they're there. It's kind of real-time marketing information. They get it, they upload it overnight. They have a bunch of people in India who do that. And then the next day it's available. The guy in Oakland didn't want to pay him for this database. So he ended up taking the database and selling it on his own. The guy sued him. He won in court because the guy never paid him for that database. He ended up selling half the business for $10 million. He just sold the other half. Well, I don't know if he was going to sell for $100 million. He was complaining because they were knocking the price down to $75 million. I was like, take the $75 million to move on with your life, right? How many of you would take that cash out, right? Right there, all of us, right? Take that. Things end up happening. We talk about your career will take twists and turns. He's now living, he's got a house in Park City. He's got a house in Delaware on the beach. He's got his own jet. We used to live, the Foothill Place apartments up on Foothill Boulevard. We used to live there together back in the late 90s. His business did really well in the late 90s. You ever hear of Y2K? You want to chide your parents about something that's totally stupid, crazy? How we all freaked out about the whole world was going to come to an end because computers couldn't recognize a 4-digit year. And that the year 2000 was 00, was going to be less than 99, and they were all going to freak out. Leading up to that, he would get paid really well. Merrill Lynch paid him $680 an hour to reprogram their computers that 4-digit year. As soon as Y2K went by, Chicken Little had to run away because the sky wasn't falling and we were all still alive. That market fell out from underneath it. He had no money. He gave half his business to his wife, 51%, so they would qualify for a women minority-owned business to get government contracts, so he could just scrape by for a few years. Then this deal with the whole thing in Oakland came up where he made that reader board, that marketing database that he didn't get paid for. He ended up not doing the database program anymore because that was making him more money. Yeah, he sold the first half for $10 million, and I'll have to check in with him if he ended up selling. He was like, oh, they're trying to chitch me down to 75 mil from 100. You dirty bastard. So we lived together. So I myself started a much smaller business. Made some money. Once we got divorced 5 years ago, biggest thing was I didn't have health care, and I needed to get health care on my own. We have great health care here. The other thing is I started saving early on. So now I'm in a position where I don't need to work full time. I don't have to have a full-time paycheck. I could do something like community college professor where the pay is not that great, but you know what? The schedule's Monday through Thursday mornings, Fridays off, 3-day weekends, month off at Christmas, and 3 months off in the summer. It's a beautiful thing. Wouldn't you like to have a student schedule the rest of your life? It's kind of a nice thing about being a student. you could blow off this class, what happens to you? You know, you get dinged a little bit for absence. You blow off work, what happens to you? Boss tells you not to come back the next day. Kind of a little different story. So that's when I started working here about 5 years ago, primarily to get health care. Secondarily, it's nice to have a little bit of income. I'm at the point I hit 54.5 this next year. There's part of the IRS tax code called Rule 72T, substantial equal periodic payments, that allows you to cash out of IRAs technically at any age, not owe a penalty on it. So you don't have to wait. Typical age is 59.5. You have to wait. It's basically 60. Anything before that, you pay a 10% penalty. This gets you out of it, but you have to do it for 5 years or till age 59.5, whichever comes later. And subtract 5 from 59.5 and you get 54.5, which I hit this April. And you see a lot of retirement communities advertise 55 and older. That's the reason why. That's considered early retirement. It's all up to you. How many would rather retire at 55? How many were want to retire at 65? And how many want to retire at 75? How many want to retire at 55? Right? The work is a 4-letter word, right? You don't want to do. My goal when I graduated was go straight from work to retirement, pay no taxes. Kind of lofty goals, you don't really hit them, but kind of moved in that direction, retire as soon as possible and pay as little as taxes. How many of you want to retire at 65 rather than 55? Anybody? That's the average retirement age. That's the age at which you qualify for both. 62, you qualify for Social Security. 65, you qualify for Medicare. Healthcare is expensive. Healthcare here is so $21,000 a year they pay for healthcare. A lot of money. I'm building a second home up in Washington, beautiful place on the Columbia River Gorge. Nice in the summers. It's usually in the 70s. When we're parked in the low hundreds here, air is clear. Great wingboarding, kiteboarding, sailing. A lot of fun sports close to the beach. But I have some neighbors. Name are Ken and Barbara. They're from California. They retired at 55. Ken's dad passed away, and I guess he had a trust. But he said their health care is $3,000 a month. Big expense. That's my number one hang up is, do I pull the plug and retire this April? Is not do I have enough money to live off of. I got enough money to live off because I started saving early. It's can I afford the health care? That's my biggest concern right now. Big concern for a lot of retirees. The average retired couple will spend $290,000 on health care while they're retired. $300,000. A lot of money. So I'm gonna step away from talking about myself. We're gonna maybe do a quick lesson here. So how many of you would like to have $1 million at retirement? Yeah, it'd be nice, right? $1 million sounds good. Yeah, go up, probably need more. By the time you retire, you probably want more than that. Right now, if you had $1 million, you'd be about okay. Safe withdrawal rate for 30 years is 4% is talked about a lot. 4.6% is a more precise amount. So think of that, $1 million, 4.6% means you can pull out $46,000 a year to live off. That should last you 30 years. The average couple who retires at 65, there's a 50-50 chance at least one person in that couple will live into their 90s, a 25% chance both will. So you plan for a 30-year retirement. That's about how long one of the two will probably live into their 90s. You need to cover that 30 years. Safe withdrawal rate is 4.6%. So if you had $1 million, that means $46,000 a year. You might add about another $24,000 a year in Social Security. So that's about $70,000 a year total. Not a ton of money. You're not going to be poor, but you're not going to be filthy rich. If you add in inflation, by the time you're retired, that $70,000 will be worth about half what it is now, $35,000. So to your point, you're probably going to want more than $1 million. So if you start saving in your 20s, you plan to retire in your 60s, you got a 40-year time horizon. You invest mostly in stocks, and let's say you earn long-term average right around 10% a year, 10.2% for the last 40 years. How much money do you need to save per month to hit $1 million? Everyone take a guess?
Starting at what age?
Starting in your 20s, let's say you have 40-year time horizon. You have 40 years till you retire. Starting in your 20s, you're going to retire in your 60s. You want to hit $1 million. How much do you need to save per month if you earn 10%? Anyone want to take a wild guess? How much do you think? Anybody? How much? 80 bucks? Yeah. That'd be a little low. 500? 500 is too high. 100 is still going to be a little too low. So the exact amount's $158. I'm going to round it up to 200. If you do 200 a month for the next 40 years at 10%, you'll have about $1.25 million. You have that extra quarter. Wouldn't you like to have an extra $250,000? Be nice, right? $1.25 million. So that's if you start in your 20s. Especially if you get a job at the 401k. So let's say you plan to do $200 a month. 401k matches that. That's only $100 a month. They're putting in $100 a month for you. Then you get a tax benefit. Tax benefit's going to be somewhere around 15 to 25% savings. So it's going to cost you about 75 to 85 bucks a month to be a millionaire. Is that a lot of money? Oh, everybody can do it, right? Everybody can do that. What if you wait until your 40s? So you graduate, life's coming at you. You want a new car because you've been driving that old clunker around. I had a 10-year-old Honda Accord that died on me in college. So then my step-grandfather sold me a 10-year-old Buick Sabre. We went on a road trip. We went from Florida. We were going to Knoxville, Tennessee to see a game against the Volunteers. We got through South Georgia and threw a rod. Basically, the engine died. Had to get it towed. Salvage company gave me 200 bucks for it. The only rent-a-car place in town was called Rent-A-Wreck. This is the middle of South Georgia. Makes Preston, Idaho look like, you know, an absolute metropolis. Got a Rent-A-Wreck, drove on, good time, stayed at a fraternity brother, graduated up in Atlanta. Some girl that I had a class with, a marketing class, we've been trading glances throughout the semester. We ended up having a nice evening, side in the backseat of the car. Went on to have a game. Kind of got, game wasn't that good, but it was a lot of fun. So when I graduated, wanted a new car. So you graduate, you want a new car, probably want some nice furniture, got to come up with money from rent. All these things are hitting you fast. All these life expenses are coming at you fast. Maybe you have a kid. Kids are very expensive. Department of Labor, this is 20 years ago, $290,000 to raise a kid. Did you think we were that expensive? Go home and thank your parents. Fidelity did a study, if you include, kind of like I did. So when I left work at Fidelity, it's because we had kids. Each kid is a full-time job. 2 full-time careers and 2 kids was too much. That's why I left there, so we didn't get divorced. Then you'll find that. And I gave up. Probably be making well into the 6 figures if I'd stayed there. Very well into 6 figures. Given up multiple millions of dollars over my life because I stayed, took my kids to school. The whole reason for this business is it gave me the flexibility to walk my daughters to school and back, take care of them, make sure I was there, basically do the at-home parent thing, and make enough money to cover all my own expenses along the way. So I didn't have to ask the spouse for any money. She paid the mortgage, but we split all the utilities, food, and all that. And then I covered all my own expenses, car, and just personal expenses. So I had that covered. But didn't make a ton of money as a ski business, made enough, but I invested early. I'd started my 20s investing. I saved as much as I could while I worked at Fidelity. Always, always, always take advantage of an employer matching amount. Somebody says to you, here's $100. You could take it as long as you put 100 down beside it into an account in your name. You tell them, no, I don't want your money. You know what? Half this country does that. Half this country says, no, I don't want that free money. It's a raise. It's doubling the amount of your contribution, cutting the amount in half that you need. Instead of 200 a month, now you only need 100 a month. So what if you wait until you're 40? So life came at you fast. You had a lot of expenses. You're like, oh, that retirement thing, that's 40 years out in the future. I don't need to worry about that now. That's a big part of this country too. So now you wait until your 40s. You're hitting your midlife crisis. You've been working for 20 years. You're tired of that work thing. You're ready to give your boss the one finger salute and walk out the door. But reality is you got another 20 years to go. So you start saying, hey, retirement's coming up. I better start saving for this now. Then how much does it cost you per month? You only got 20 years to go at this point. Said 158 is the exact amount. We're going to shoot for 200 a month. Everybody in here is going to shoot for $200 a month when you graduate. That. Now you wait until your 40s. How much do you need per month to hit that $1 million mark? Double, because you only have half the time. Kind of sounds logical. But then not only do you miss half the time, you didn't get all the growth on that. Who else wants to take a guess? Quite a bit more than double. More than that. About 1,500, about 10 times what it would have taken if you'd started in your 20s. 1,500. How many of you think you're going to have 1,500 a month spare change? Probably won't, right? You might if you get a good job. It's possible. You might, you know, it can happen.
Russell, I can tell you, you won't.
Probably won't, especially if you have kids. It'll be a stretch. Possible but doable. Now let's say you wait until your 50s. Kids are out of the house now. You no longer have that expense. You're really tired of work and retirement's only 10 years away. Then how much do you need to save? About 5,500. You thought 1,500 was a stretch, 5,500. If you're making enough money to have a spare 5,500 a month, you don't have to worry about it in the first place, right? But most of us won't have that money. So what's the moral of the story? Start early. What's the most valuable commodity in the world? Time. Time. Most of you are in your 20s. You have 60 years of life expectancy left. I'm in my 50s. I have 30 years. You are twice as wealthy as I am. You have twice as much time. You want to see the exact math in it? So the future value equation, how much your money will be worth. Simply future value equals present value times 1 plus R. That's your rate of return to the end. Present value is how much you're investing. R is your rate of return. N is time, number of periods you compound. Think back to your grade school algebra. What's the most powerful part of any equation? The exponent. Time. That's time in the equation showing you time is money. How compounding works, and time works. Let's say you start now, year 0, you have $100, you invest, you get 10%. At the end of your first year, how much money do you have? What's 10% of $100? $10, so 110. Now you get another year. 10% of 110 is how much? $11. Now you have 121. Third year, what's 10% of 121? $12.10, so 133.10. Year 4, 10% of that, another 13.30 is going to be 146.40. Year 5, you're going to add about 14.60. So what does that bring us up to? I think $160. Call it 161. Round off. Year 6, another $16, 177. Year 7, you add 1770 to that, you're roughly about 195. You pretty much doubled your money. There's a rule called the rule of 72. 72 divided by your rate of return as a whole number tells you the approximate number of years to double your money. 72 divided by 10 would tell you 7.2 years to double your money. So you pretty well double it there. Now that 100 became 200 over 7 years. The next 7 years, that 200 became 400. That's 14 years. At 21 years, 400 becomes 800. 28 years, 800 becomes 1600. 35 years, 1600 becomes 3200. 42 years, 3200 becomes 6400. One single $100 investment became $6,400. That's how you get to be a millionaire with only $158 a month. You start early. Now, if you start late, what are you cutting off? You got the value of your investments. You have time. You're going to kind of start slow. They're going to skyrocket at the end. Now, let's say you wait just 7 years. Just 7 years. Doesn't seem like a long time, right? Retirement's 40 years away. What's waiting 7 years? It's not going to cost you a lot of money, is it? You know what it costs you? It doesn't cost you the 7 here. It costs you 7 years back here. Difference between $500,000 and $1 million. Wait 7 years, you just cost yourself $500,000. Doesn't seem like that right now, does it? Is that even on your mind that that 7 years is going to cost you that much? Because you'd much rather have a nice car, right? Some nice clothes, good place to live. Maybe you want to take a trip somewhere. All good things to do, but make sure you're also saving along the way. Make that a top priority. If you start here, you got 40 years, you'll get to $1 million. You'll probably get to your 50s. In fact, if you're good at investing, you get to the $1 million at a time. So when you hit your mid-50s, you might say, gee, I don't want to wait until I'm 65 to retire. I'm ready to retire now. You have that option. It's a very nice thing to do. It takes a lot of stress out of life, too. You don't have to worry about things like budget cuts, cutbacks. It's like not on the horizon for you. It's like, hey, they forced me into retirement early. Oh, gee, what a bad thing. I can afford it, right?
Just about out of time. We give a few opportunities for questions. Is that okay?
That'll be good, yeah.
Down by any means, but I know.
I think that pretty well covered what I wanted to do. So does anybody have any questions? Good question, very good question. So it depends on your time horizon. The other advantage you get by having a long time horizon, starting early, the biggest determinant of how you should invest is how much time you have. When you have a long time horizon, you don't worry if the market takes a big drop. The market drops 40%. So when you're saving for retirement or anything, any goal that you're investing for, what are you doing? You're buying investments, right? So whenever you're buying anything and you see a sale that's 40% off, what do? Woo! I wanted to buy this. This is a good deal. When you're young and the market takes a big dip, Great Recession when it went down 40%, March of 2020, COVID hit, 25% off sale. It's an awesome thing. Awesome, awesome, awesome. You love it. So let's say you have a 401k plan. Typical 401k plan might look something like this. You can contribute up to 10% and the company will match 5%. General rule of thumb is you should be saving 14% of your pre-tax income towards retirement. So company does 5% match. You say, okay, I don't want to leave any money on the table, so I'm going to do 5%, but that full 10% is kind of crippling my budget a little. So I'll just do 5%, get that 5% matching amount. But then the market goes on sale, 25% off, 40% off. What's the best thing to do? Up that contribution, max it out. Because then what are you doing? You're buying cheaper. Say you have $100 going in, you're buying a mutual fund that's $10 a share, 100 divided by 10 would mean you're buying 10 shares per month. If it goes down 40% down to $6 a share, now you're buying almost 17 shares per month, more for the same amount of money. Just like any shopping you do, we like to buy on sale, right? So when you're young, when the market goes down, it's a godsend to you. Buying more at a cheaper price, that's a great thing. When is that a bad thing? So think again, now, what if you're the store owner and you're having to sell on a 40% off sale? Are you making any money? No. When you're a seller of investments, you don't want the market to go down. When are you a seller of investments? When you're retired, taking that money out to live off of. So retirees, instead of investing in stocks and getting a 10% return, mostly invest in bonds or have more in bonds. Why? Because bonds are stable. They don't fluctuate as much. A down year in the bond market for investment grade bonds is around 1 to 5%. It's never more than 1 year down. It always comes back by the next year. But they only average 4 to 5% on the upside going up. Stocks average 10.2% over the last 40 years, the S&P 500 over the last 40 years. But it's like a roller coaster. Chug, 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 kind of goes up slowly, hits the top, whoo, comes down really quick. March of 2020, 25% drop in 1 month. Just a couple weeks ago, rates are rising to combat inflation. Economy is going to slow down. The government wants the economy to slow down. Go buy Del Taco. You see that sign, 20 bucks an hour to make tacos. They used to have a sign that said 99-cent tacos. Do you think they're selling 99-cent tacos when they got to pay somebody 20 bucks an hour to make them? No, you don't get the 99-cent taco anymore. When I started building my home in Washington 7 years ago, a 2x4 would cost me 96 cents. Now it's $9.62. Inflation's a problem for retirees. Talked about having that money last. They got to make sure they can keep pace with inflation over 30 years, a long period of time. So as a young investor, mostly in stocks, at a security markets class just before this, we were talking about allocations. When you're young, usually about an 85% stock, 15% bond portfolio. Best way to start is get what's called a target date fund. Real easy to do. Start there. If you have a 401k plan at work, most 401ks now, if you don't pick the funds to invest in, they'll put you in a target date fund with a date closest to the age you turn 65. And what those funds do, they start out mostly in stocks. For your first 20 years until your 40s, you should be about 85% stocks, 15% bonds. Once you get into your 40s, you scale back to about 75% stocks, 25% bonds. Then in your 50s, down to about 60% stocks, 40% bonds. Once you get into retirement, you go to more bonds. Why is that? Because if the market drops on you, it takes 7 years to come back. You don't have that 7 years. You need the money right then and there. But when you're young, that's a sale opportunity. You're buying on sale. Throw your arms in the air, max out your contribution. If you have any more money, put it in a Roth IRA. It's a great thing to put it into. That's the type of account. As far as particular funds, it's a little more involved than we have time for. Kirsty was mentioning personal finance, Finance 1050 is a good course to take. Then I teach a financial planning course, Finance 2200 in the fall, and security markets, Finance 2600 in the spring. Personal finance, we cover everything, including loans, healthcare, and all that. Financial planning, we take out loans. It's mostly about planning for your future. And then security markets is just all investing. So we talk about all that stuff. As far as like, if you want to know the hot stock now to invest in, that's kind of like predicting the weather. The store we're seeing right now, remember a week ago was supposed to come Sunday night, then it was Monday night. Now we see it here finally on Wednesday. Predicting the stock market's kind of like predicting the weather. Way too many variables go into it. Right now, it talks about we're in one of the most peaceful times in the world's history. There are no major wars. But what's in the news every night? Russia's about to invade Ukraine, and China wants to take back Taiwan. Anytime you have a war, the market loses 20%. The market does not like wars at all. Every single time when September 11th hit, lost 20%, pretty much within a couple of days of that event. We knew we were going to go to war. But when you're young, those are buying opportunities. When you're old and you need that money, so you saved your $200 a month or $158 a month, 40 years later, you got $1 million. That boss that you hate, give him the one finger salute, walk out the door. I got $1 million. That's September of 2008. By March of 2009, that $1 million had shrank to 600,000. Wouldn't that hurt? But do you feel sorry for the guy who's got 600,000? Is he going to go homeless or hungry? No. We talk about how you change your portfolio to bonds so that instead of losing 400,000, you only lose If you had about half in stocks and half in bonds, then you would have lost 150,000. Still a lot of money. What would you rather lose, 150,000 or 400? Rather lose 150, right? You have 800. So what you invest in, primarily driven by your time horizon, secondarily driven by your risk tolerance. One of the worst things you could do, though, is when the market went down in 2008, people hit the panic button, they sold. You don't want to sell after it goes down. Idea is you buy low and sell high. They were selling low. They didn't get the courage or conviction to buy back in until the market had come back. So they sold low and bought high. They shot themselves in the foot. One of the things you have to do, the second thing you got to do is, are you comfortable with that roller coaster ride? We all go to Lagoon, we look for the biggest roller coaster, just drop straight out of the sky. You can throw your hands in the air. Woo, look at me, I did that roller coaster, right? A little different story when it's your money and you spent your whole life saving up for it. So you have to be comfortable. If you're not comfortable with that risk, you're better off being a little more conservatively invested, get a little less return, but you don't hit the panic button. You don't lose sleep at night. You got to be able to sleep with your investments. So as you get older, that's when you want to be a little more conservative.
Because I'll post some information about like
So are we out of time? I guess we are.
yeah.
I got one question. So if you get $800,000, then your interest 5% is, can you draw that out and drop that 40,000?
Oh yeah, and then you keep the balance in there. So depends on how you set up the portfolio. Good thing to do. A lot of retirees do what's called a bond ladder. And now interest rates are really low, but generally you'd expect about that 5%. Yeah, you live off the income. So interest from bonds and dividends from stocks. And that's what I'm setting up my portfolio to do. And I recently set up a family trust. My goal is to just live off the income and then leave that base money for my children down the road. So
Is that the best way to do it?
best way to do it is start early. I harp on that for a reason. Time is the most valuable commodity in the world. And what do you have on your side right now? Time. Don't get out of school and think, oh, that's 40 years away. I got time to, I can deal with that later. Deal with it now. It'll be a lot easier.
So do you think that the stock market game that Neil and Becca offer is a good way to stock market?
I'm not intimately familiar, but I think it's where they give you kind of like a mock portfolio.
Yeah, they give you like $20. They play around with it and see what
See how it does. Good way to kind of get your feet wet. Do that, but then on your own, in terms of real money, start with a target date fund. Start doing that around $200 a month. If you get out, you have a 401k plan. Max out the matching percentage. Do not turn that money down. Take it. Half this country does turn it down. Worst thing they can do. If you take it, you'll be plenty happy later in life. If you don't, you'll be looking back at it saying, I wish I had taken advantage of that. I guarantee you that's what you'll be.
Yeah, you'll literally not. Because you take it out with like your health insurance and your taxes. So it's taken out. You don't even see it. You don't even miss it. All of a sudden you pull up that special account and it's like, oh, there's money there.
Yeah.
It's nice. Leave it there. So leave it there.
Comes out pre-tax. Most people say exactly that. They don't notice it out of their budget. Had a student worked at Sherwin-Williams. He was just a counter clerk. He said that. He said he didn't notice money being gone, but after just 2 years, he had 28,000. And he's like, hey, you know, it's not enough to retire off of, but it was just 2 years. He was in his 20s, and he's like, I got 28,000. Well, on his way to that $1 million. Getting personal finance to talk about it, even if you start. So I did 10 years. I maxed out my savings. Since then, I've just been letting the growth do the work, kind of what you're talking about. Ex-wife and my sister both waited 10 years. They make about $200,000 a year, 4 times what I make here, but they'll be spending the rest of their life catching up because they waited 10 years to start. That's the value of time. So get started early. Number one thing you can do for yourself. If you take advantage of it, and if you don't have a 401k plan, do an IRA or a Roth IRA is really good when you're young and you have a long-term horizon. And for simplicity, target date funds. If you want to get into more than that, I would suggest taking Joe Hollida's investments course or how to use security markets. Good courses to take so that you can understand investing and what to invest in. You're not just, if you don't know what you're investing in, you're gambling. Go drive over to Windover or down to Vegas. They'll at least get you drunk while you lose your money. You want to get into cryptos. I'll tell you right now, you're gambling. You're gambling. Go down to Vegas, get drunk for free. Well, thanks. Thanks for listening. Stay in a few extra minutes.